Welcome to the second part of our lesson. Now let me know if you can identify the important terms in this lesson. Let's have this activity. So what you're going to do is to identify the term being described in each statement. Are you ready? Okay, so let's start. Number 1. It refers to how the information within a written text is organized. What do you call that? Correct! So that is structure. Number 2. It refers to the author's intention, objective, or goal upon writing the text. What do you call that? Very good! So that is purpose. Number 3. It refers to the techniques used by the writers such as figures of speech, sentence structure, tone, and word choice. What is that term? Correct! So that is language picture. And the last one, number 4, it is a way of classifying and defining different types of language interaction, both spoken and written. And that is correct. So that is text type. So very good. Let us know the purpose of the author, the structure, and the language features used in writing each text type. First in our list is narrative. A narrative is a text that tells a story, and in doing so, entertains the audience. So the purpose of a narrative, other than providing entertainment, can be to make the audience think about an issue, teach them a lesson, or excite their emotion. Written narratives often take the form of novels. The story is usually told by a narrator. If the narrator is one of the characters in the story is said to be told in the first person point of view. If a person outside the story is the narrator, then the story is being told in the third person point of view. Examples of narrative texts include myths, fairy tales, aboriginal dreaming stories, science fiction, historical fiction, and romance novels. Now let us proceed to the grammatical or language feature of a narrative text. Narratives usually include the following grammatical features or language features. We have nouns that identify the specific characters and places in the story. Adjectives that provide accurate descriptions of the characters and settings. We also use verbs that show the actions that occur in the story, and adverbs of time that connect events telling when they occurred. Now let us proceed to the features of a narrative text, meaning these are the steps in constructing a narrative text. First, you're going to have orientation. Second, complication. Third, sequence of events that followed by resolution. And the last part is the coda. Now let us elaborate each step by using the narrative text scaffold. First is the orientation. In this paragraph, the narrator tells the audience who is in the story, when it is happening, where it is happening, and what is going on. So basically, orientation is giving the characters and the setting of the story. The second part of the narrative text is called complication. So this is the part of the story where the narrator tells about something that will begin a chain of events. These events will affect one or more of the characters. The complication is the trigger. Oftentimes, every story deals with an issue or a problem. This part of the story tells the problem or issue. that the main characters are dealing with, which influences the remaining events in the story. The third part of the narrative text is called sequence of events. So this is where the narrator tells how the characters react to the complication. It includes their feelings and what they do. The events can be told in chronological order, that is, the order in which they happen, or with flashbacks. The audience is given the narrator's point of view. The fourth is resolution. In this part of the narrative, the complication is sorted out or the problem is solved. And finally, the last part of the narrative text is coda. The narrator includes a coda if there is a moral or message to be learned from the story. This part of the narrative provides a comment or moral based on what has been learned from the story. It is an optional step. Okay, so to figure out what part or where is that part of the narrative text, I have here the example, a model of a narrative. So you can find here the structures. Okay, the first paragraph is the orientation, which is it tells who and where. Okay, the setting, the characters and the setting. Next paragraph is the complication that triggers a series of events. The complication, since it triggers a series of events, then we have the sequence of events where the characters react to the complication, to the problem. And since we have complication or problem, there should be a solution. So the fourth part of our narrative text must have resolution in which the problem from the complication is solved. And the last part is the coda that gives the moral of the story. Okay, so let's have the language features. We already done with the structure, then let's look for the language features mentioned for the narrative type. So in language features, we have here specific characters, the wife and children. So you can find it here. The next is adjectives. So we can have here providing descriptions for rugged, dried looking. That is the description for the character, the children. Another language feature that you can see in a narrative is what we call the use of time words to connect events. So we have here, it is near sunset. Okay, it gives the time. And 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So it states time. Another language features that you may use as a writer is the use of verbs showing actions. So here we have springs and shakes for verbs. And the last language feature is the use of adjectives showing descriptions. So we have here mangled and the eldest. Now let's proceed to the next text, which is information report. So information report is a piece of text that presents information about a subject. Its purpose is to classify and or describe using facts about the subject's parts, behavior, and qualities. The subject is usually general rather than particular. For example, hands rather than an individual hands. So here are the examples of information report: lectures, reference articles, research assignments, and chapters in textbooks. Information report usually include the following language features. First, technical language related to the subject. Technical use of the timeless present tense. Technical use of general nouns, example, weather, skin, earthquakes, rather than proper nouns. Technical linking verbs to describe the behaviors of or qualities. Example, cells are surrounded by membrane. How do we construct an information report? Here are the steps. First, there is the general statement about the event or thing. Next, follows a series of paragraphs that tell the hows and whys. And the final step is a concluding paragraph. Okay, so let's elaborate each step. The first step is a general opening statement in the first paragraph. So this statement tells the audience what the text is going to be about. This can include a short description of the subject or a definition of the subject. The second step is a series of paragraphs about the subject. Each paragraph usually begins with a topic sentence. The topic sentence is the beginning of each paragraph, previews the information contained in the rest of the paragraph. The sentences after this preview give more details. These paragraphs build a description of the subject of the report. The author may include technical language that is related to the subject. The last part of an information report is a concluding paragraph, which is optional. The concluding paragraph signals the end of the text. This paragraph can summarize the report. To figure out the structures and language features of an information report, let's have this model. So we have here the structures. The first paragraph is what we call introduction with a brief description. You can see here. And the next part is the paragraphs about the subject. So it is a series of paragraphs talking about or describing more of the subject. And the author included conclusion. How about looking for the language features? So we have here in the same model, timeless present tense, okay, using the word is. We also have technical terms, which is spiral, barrel, spiral, and elliptical. And the general nouns, stars and clouds. And that comprises the purpose, the language features, and the structure of an information text. Now let's proceed to argumentative text or argument. Argumentative texts are intended to influence and convince the audience or readers in terms of communicative functions. This type of text proves that his or her opinion, theory, or hypothesis about an issue is correct or more truthful than those of others. It's very similar to persuasive text, but the difference is that you are arguing for your opinion as opposed to others rather than directly trying to persuade someone to adapt to your point of view. Also, an argumentative text is a text where different points of view on an issue are presented. A position is stated and then supported with arguments. The purpose is to support ideas presented in sequence to justify a particular stand or viewpoint that a writer is taking. In other words, to make or to take a position on some issue and justify it. Here are types of argument. We have discussion, debate, commentary, and editorial. Now, how do we write an argument? Here are the steps. An argument usually consists of the following. First, a statement of position at the beginning, a logical sequence. The argument is put forward in a series of points with back-up evidence, and a good argument shows cause and effects. What language features can we use to make or to construct an argument? So, argument texts usually include the following grammatical features. First, written in the timeless present tense. Next, the writer uses repetition of words, phrases, and concepts deliberately for effect. Third one, we have verbs. Verbs are used when expressing opinions. We also use strong effective adjectives. And thought-provoking questions are used. The use of pronouns I, we, us, is used to manipulate the reader to agree with the position argued. So let us elaborate these steps in writing an argument. First one, a clear, concise, and defined thesis statement that occurs in the first paragraph. Set the context by reviewing the topic in a general way. Explain why the topic is important, exigence, or why the reader should care about the issue. Present the thesis statement. Second part is a clear and logical transitions between the introduction, body, and conclusion. Transition should wrap up the idea from the previous section and introduce the idea that is to follow in the next section. With logical progression of thought, the reader is able to follow the text argument and the structure will be strong. The third part is the body. Body paragraphs that include evidential support. Each paragraph should be limited to the discussion of one general idea. This will allow for clarity and direction throughout the text. Conciseness creates an ease of readability for the readers. Each paragraph in the body of the text must have some logical connection to the thesis statement in the opening paragraph. Some paragraphs will directly support the thesis statement with evidence collected during research. It is also important to explain how and why the evidence supports the thesis, or what we call warrant. The fourth part of an argument text is evidential support, whether factual, logical, statistical, or anecdotal. Argument text requires well-researched, accurate, detailed, and current information to support the thesis statement and consider other points of view. However, the author must consider multiple points of view when collecting evidence. A successful and well-rounded argument text will also discuss opinions not aligning with the thesis. It is unethical to exclude evidence that may not support the thesis, but it is the author's job to explain how other positions may not be well informed or up to date on the topic. The last part of an argument text is a conclusion that does not simply restate the thesis, but readdresses it in the light of the evidence provided. This is the part of the text that will leave the most immediate impression on the mind of the reader. Therefore, it must be effective and logical. Do not introduce any new information. Rather, synthesize the information presented in the body of the text. Restate why the topic is important. Review the main points and review the thesis. Finally, we have procedure text. A procedure is a text that tells how to do something. The purpose is to provide instructions for making something, doing something, or getting somewhere. Examples of procedure texts include recipes, itineraries, instruction manuals, and directions. Procedure texts usually include the following grammatical features: sentence that begins with verbs and are stated as commands, time words or numbers that show the order for carrying out the procedure, adverbs to describe how the action should be performed, and precise terms and technical language. How do we write a procedure text? Here are the steps. So a procedure text usually has 3 sections. There is an introductory statement or title that gives the aim or goal of the procedure, followed by a list of materials that will be needed to complete the procedure. And the final section is a sequence of steps in the order they need to be completed. to achieve this goal. Some procedures have other stages such as explaining why each step is necessary. Let's elaborate these steps in making or in writing procedure using text scaffold. First one, an introductory statement giving the aim or goal. This may be the title of the text, or this may also be an introductory paragraph. The next step is materials needed for completing the procedure. This may be a list, this may be a paragraph, or this step may be left out in some procedures. The last part of a procedure text is a sequence of steps in the correct order. Numbers can be used to show first, second, third, and so on. The order is usually important. Words such as now, next, and after this can be used. These steps usually begin with a command such as add, steer, or push. To figure out the parts of a procedure, here are some models. So we have here the structures showing the goal or the title. Then we have here the list of materials required to complete the procedure. Okay, in this model, you can see the structures and the grammatical features or language features of a procedure. So for structure, we have the sequence of steps in the order they need to be completed. And for the grammatical features, we have sentences beginning with verbs and sentences written as commands. Another model is we have here the structure and the grammatical features. So the title gives the goal, how to reduce the risk of heart attack. And we have also the sequence of steps to achieve the goal. And for grammatical features, this model used adverbs showing order. So firstly, secondly. And it also uses sentences written as commands. So, see your doctor regularly and eat a low-fat diet. So those are the commands.